"You're not my father anymore," she screamed, voice shaking the windows I once caulked with my bare hands. Emma stood at the foot of the porch, her fists clenched, eyes burning with fury. All because I said no. No to signing over the lake house, the home where her mother and I danced barefoot on our last anniversary. Her husband, Ryan, leaned on the hood of their new SUV, smirking like he'd already won. She turned and left without waiting for an answer. That night, I poured a whiskey, opened my will, and picked up my pen. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. I used to be her whole world. After Marjorie passed, it was just the two of us, me and my little girl, Emma. She was 6 when cancer took her mother, too young to understand why her mama stopped singing in the mornings. I remember the day I found her curled up in Marjorie's closet, holding one of her scarves, asking if we could leave it hanging because it still smells like her. I said yes. And we left that scarf hanging for years. Raising her alone wasn't easy, but I never saw it as a burden. I worked long days as a carpenter, and when work dried up in the winter months, I scrubbed floors at the local school to make ends meet. I came home with sore knees and splinters in my palms, but the moment Emma ran into my arms yelling, "Daddy," every ache vanished. We had our own little traditions. Sunday pancakes shaped like animals, late-night blanket forts, and annual camping trips by the lake. She was afraid of fish but loved roasting marshmallows. On those nights, when the stars reflected off the water and the world felt still, she'd lean her head on my shoulder and whisper, "You and me forever, Daddy." Sometimes I still hear that in my sleep. I never remarried. There were kind women who showed interest, but none of them were Marjorie. And truthfully, I didn't want Emma to feel like she was sharing me. I knew how delicate a child's heart could be. Mine had been cracked wide open when I lost Marjorie. I wasn't about to risk hers too. We made do with what we had. I remember sewing patches into her favorite overalls until the fabric itself was more stitched than denim. She never minded. She was proud. "My daddy fixes everything," she used to brag to her friends. She was smart, too. Always had her nose in a book, even when other kids teased her. I saved every spare dollar for her education, skipped new boots for 3 winters just to make sure she had the laptop she needed for college applications. And when she got accepted into the university 3 states over, I cried in the truck the whole drive back. Empty nest hit hard. The house was too quiet, the lake too still. I kept busy with projects. Built birdhouses, repainted the porch, even fixed up the old guest room, just in case she came home more often. At first, she did. Every break, she came home with stories and laundry. We'd sit on the porch drinking lemonade, laughing at her campus tales. She still let me call her kiddo. And she always asked for pancakes, even when she was 22. But slowly, the visits grew shorter. Then they became calls. Then they became texts. And then, less. I blamed myself at first. Maybe I was too clingy. Maybe I made her feel guilty for growing up. But then came Ryan. He showed up one Thanksgiving. Tall, confident, all teeth and handshake. Called me, sir, with a little too much emphasis, like he was mocking it. I tried to give him a chance. Emma was glowing, in love, excited. Who was I to get in the way? They got married the following spring. Small ceremony, just family. Emma wore Marjorie's locket. I walked her down the aisle with tears in my eyes, whispering, "She'd be proud of you, baby." But Ryan didn't look at me during the ceremony. Not once. After the wedding, things changed quicker than I expected. Emma stopped calling me just to chat. Everything was, we're busy, we have plans, we can't make it this weekend. I'd ask how she was, and the answer would always be something about Ryan's job or their apartment or their investment plans. I remember the first time she mentioned the house. We were sitting on the dock, her sipping iced tea and looking out at the lake. She said, almost casually, "You ever think about what'll happen to this place? I mean, eventually." I chuckled, not picking up on it yet. "Well, I was hoping to live another 20 years or so." She didn't laugh. She just nodded slowly, lips tight. "Yeah, of course. It's just, a lot of value here. Could be smart to plan ahead." That was the first hairline crack. I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning of a very slow erosion, not of the house, but of the bond we'd spent a lifetime building. Still, I tried to see the best in her. In them. I invited them for dinners, sent birthday cards, even offered to help with their mortgage when Ryan lost his job briefly. Emma always said thank you, but less like a daughter and more like a bank customer. It stung. But I figured it was just the growing pains of adult life. Then came that summer, the summer that ended with her screaming that I wasn't her father anymore. But before all that, before the arguments, the papers, the cold stares, there was a little girl with pigtails and syrup on her cheeks, dancing barefoot in the kitchen to her mother's favorite song. There was once love. A lot of it. And that's what made what happened next hurt so much more. The shift didn't happen all at once. It was quiet, like watching fog roll in across the lake. At first, you barely notice it. Then, before you know it, everything's gray. It started with the way Emma stopped calling me Dad. I didn't catch it at first. But one day, she said, "Hey," over the phone instead of her usual, "Hi, Dad." Small thing. But once you hear it, you can't unhear it. From then on, it was just, "Hey," or, "Can I ask you something?" No warmth. No laughter. And that something was almost always about money. Ryan lost his job twice in 3 years. First, it was a tech startup that just didn't appreciate his vision. Then it was a real estate firm where he said the market was too saturated with old money. Whatever that meant. Each time, Emma would call and ask if I could help them float for a few months. I didn't want to see them struggle, especially not Emma. So I did what any father would, I helped. But the gratitude faded fast. First, it was thank you calls. Then texts. Then nothing. One afternoon, I visited their apartment unannounced, just passing through town on my way back from a supply store. Emma opened the door looking startled. She hugged me, but it felt half-hearted, like a reflex. Ryan stayed on the couch, barely glanced up from his phone. "Didn't know you were coming," he said, not getting up. I didn't either. Just figured I'd drop in and say hi. He nodded, uninterested. Cool. I sat there while Emma made tea in the kitchen. The silence was thick. Ryan didn't ask about the house. Didn't ask about me. Just scrolled and smirked. When Emma returned, she kept checking the time. I got the message. I left within the hour. The next sign came during Christmas. Every year since Marjorie passed, Emma and I had this tradition: we'd decorate the tree together with her mother's ornaments. There was this little ceramic angel with a chipped wing that Emma insisted be placed at the very top, no matter how lopsided it made the tree look. It was her favorite. She used to say, "That angel's just like us, Dad, a little broken, but still holding on." That year, she didn't come. She said they had other plans with Ryan's family. Said it too casually, like the tradition meant nothing now. I didn't argue. I just sat by the tree that night, staring at that angel. I didn't even hang it. I just held it. I think that's when I started realizing that Emma, the Emma I raised, was slowly slipping away. Over the next few months, the tone of her messages changed. She used words like property, estate planning, liquidity. She asked if I'd ever considered getting things in writing early. She said it was just smart planning. I'd reply with, "Everything's fine the way it is." But I could sense the disappointment in her silence. Then came the passive-aggressive jokes. Ryan would say things like, "Man, this house could fetch a fortune on the market," or, "Too bad it's stuck in the past, no offense, sir." Always with that damn smirk. And Emma? She'd either look away or chuckle nervously. One day, as we stood on the back porch, Emma said something I'll never forget. "You know, it'd be easier for everyone if the house was in our name now, just to avoid probate and all that mess later." I didn't respond. I just looked at her. She didn't look back. Later that evening, I found her walking through the rooms with her phone out, taking photos. Of the kitchen, the den, even Marjorie's sewing room. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "Oh, just memories." But her eyes darted away too fast. I began to notice how Ryan spoke for both of them now. At dinner, I'd ask Emma how work was, and he'd answer. I'd ask if they had travel plans, and he'd answer. I once asked her directly, "Emma, are you happy?" She looked at Ryan first, then said, "We're doing what's best for our future." The distance between us had grown wider than the lake. Still, I kept giving them the benefit of the doubt. I told myself they were just overwhelmed, just trying to build a life. Maybe I was too attached to the past. Maybe I needed to let go. But deep down, I felt it, that gnawing unease. That quiet voice in the back of my mind whispering, "They're not coming from a place of love anymore." It was a Thursday when I caught Ryan in the garage, measuring the walls with a tape measure. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Oh, just curious. Thinking about how we could open this space up someday." "We?" He grinned. "Come on, you know Emma's the only child. It'll all be hers eventually. We're just thinking long-term. Eventually." That word stuck in my head all night. Eventually, they'd take it. Eventually, I'd be gone. And in the meantime, I was just a placeholder. An obstacle. I stopped sleeping well after that. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned in slow, steady circles. Marjorie's photo sat on my nightstand, smiling, unaware. I'd whisper to her, "Is it me? Did I raise her wrong?" I kept telling myself to be patient. That she'd come around. But I also started locking the file cabinet where I kept the deed. I didn't realize it then, but I had already started pulling away, not out of anger, but out of heartbreak. The kind that doesn't come from strangers, but from the people you once loved more than life itself. It was a Sunday, warm, breezy, with just enough sun to make the lake sparkle like glass. The kind of day Marjorie used to call a porch-sitting day. I had grilled chicken on the smoker, potato salad ready, and peach cobbler cooling on the counter. Emma had agreed to bring a few friends from out of town for a casual afternoon get-together. I was hopeful, maybe this would remind her what this place meant. What we meant. I should have known better. They arrived late. Emma barely said hello before walking straight to the backyard with her phone in hand. Ryan trailed behind, sunglasses on, already opening a beer. Two couples I didn't recognize followed, younger, loud, full of energy that didn't belong to this old house. I greeted them, offered drinks, made small talk. One of the women looked around and said, "Wow, this place has serious potential." Ryan chuckled. "Right? You should see the master bedroom, huge windows, lake view. We could totally modernize the whole layout." I blinked. "We?" Emma cut in before I could say more. "Dad, could you bring out some more chairs? We're just gonna hang here a while." I nodded slowly and walked back into the house, heart heavy, arms numb. From the kitchen, I could hear them through the open windows. They weren't quiet. "Once we knock out that wall, this could be an open-concept masterpiece," Ryan said, like he already owned it. Someone else asked, "So when's the big move-in?" Emma laughed. We're working on it. Just a matter of paperwork. Paperwork. Not a word about me. Not a word about the fact that I was still living there. I stood still in the kitchen, the smell of peach cobbler wrapping around me like a cruel joke. My hands were shaking, so I set down the tray of glasses before I dropped it. I walked back outside with a forced smile and placed the drinks on the table. Ryan raised his bottle toward me. You've really kept this place in great shape, sir. Almost feels like a waste not to do more with it. I didn't answer. Just looked at Emma. She didn't meet my eyes. Later that afternoon, one of their friends asked Emma if the house was already in her name. And without hesitation, Emma replied, not yet. But it's basically mine. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Right there, in front of strangers, my daughter claimed ownership of the house, the one I built with Marjorie, the one we raised her in, the one that held her mother's laugh in its walls. I said nothing. I couldn't. I just walked to the edge of the yard and stared out at the lake. The same lake where Marjorie and I used to skip stones. The same dock where Emma caught her first fish. The same porch where we danced to scratchy records when the power went out during storms. Every piece of this place held a memory. And yet, to her, it was just an asset. When the guests finally left, Emma lingered on the steps while Ryan packed the car. She glanced at me, arms crossed. Don't look at me like that, she said, flatly. Like what? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Like I'm stealing something. I'm your only child. What's yours will be mine anyway. I want to make sure it's taken care of properly. I stepped back, hurt. You think I haven't taken care of it? She looked away. That's not what I meant. But I knew exactly what she meant. I didn't say another word. I went inside and locked the door. I heard her knock once, then twice. Then I heard her sigh and walk away. That night, I sat in Marjorie's sewing room. The place she used to call her little sanctuary. Her fabric was still in the drawers, folded neatly. Her old thimble still sat on the window ledge, catching light from the setting sun. I stared at the empty rocking chair across from me. I think we lost her, I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself cry. Not just quiet tears, but the kind that shake your whole chest. The kind that come from years of holding on too tightly to something that's already gone. I thought of all the birthdays, all the sick days, all the nights I sat by Emma's bed during thunderstorms, whispering, "Daddy's here." All the report cards pinned to the fridge, all the scraped knees kissed. All the sacrifices, all the love. None of it seemed to matter anymore. Not to her. The worst part wasn't the embarrassment, though that stung deeply. The worst part was the silence from her. She didn't even defend me. Didn't correct the assumption that the house was already hers. Didn't show the slightest awareness that what she said might hurt. And that silence? That was betrayal. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a screaming match or slammed doors. It was quiet. Casual. Dismissive. Like I didn't even exist anymore. I wish I could say the barbecue was the low point, but things went deeper than hurt feelings. They went darker. Colder. And more calculated than I ever imagined. It happened about a week after the incident in the yard, the day Emma called the house basically mine. I hadn't heard from her since. No apology. No clarification. Nothing. Just radio silence. Then, out of the blue, she called. "Hey, Dad," she said, too cheerfully. "Ryan and I were thinking of swinging by Saturday morning, if that's okay. Just to talk." "Talk about what?" I asked. "Oh, nothing serious. Just stuff. Planning." I hesitated. Something in her tone felt rehearsed. But I agreed. Against my better judgment, I always did. Saturday morning came. Ryan was driving this time, not Emma. I noticed how he parked right up by the garage, like he owned the place already. Emma came in carrying a small tote bag and 2 coffees. "We brought you one," she said, placing it on the counter without eye contact. Ryan sat at the kitchen table like he belonged there. I tried to play along, offered a seat, made small talk. Emma nodded here and there. Ryan mostly looked bored. Then she asked, "Dad, could I use the bathroom?" "Of course," I said. "You know where it is." She left her tote bag by the coat rack. And that's when something told me to look. I didn't want to. I hated the feeling. But it was heavy in my chest, a voice I couldn't ignore. So I quietly leaned down and peeked into the bag. What I saw turned my stomach. A printed copy of a power of attorney document, half-filled, with my name at the top. Another file was labeled "Long-Term Care Options, Facilities Near You." And under that? A printed spreadsheet titled "Projected Sale Value, Lakefront Property, Unlisted." I stood there staring at those papers like they were written in a foreign language. Because this couldn't be my daughter. My Emma. My little girl who used to pick daisies for her mama and fall asleep in my lap. This was a plan. A full, deliberate, thought-out plan to take everything. To remove me, not just from the house, but from control over my own life. I heard the toilet flush and quickly stood up. She returned, smiling too wide. "You okay, Dad?" I nodded. "Yeah. Just fine." I didn't mention what I saw. Not yet. I sat back down, and the 3 of us chatted for another 15 minutes. Ryan started talking about how the market's changing and how it'd be a good time to transition ownership sooner rather than later. Emma played along, gently nudging me with talk of simplifying things and easing the stress. I nodded along, offering nothing. I felt like I was watching strangers, con artists in familiar faces. After they left, I stood in the doorway long after their car pulled out of the driveway. I didn't wave. I just stared. That evening, I went into the garage and pulled out an old lockbox, the one where I kept Marjorie's letters, the deed to the house, and my original will. I opened the will and read it through, line by line. It still had Emma's name on it. Still listed her as the sole beneficiary. Back when I believed that was the right thing, the only thing, to do. Now, I wasn't sure. I walked upstairs, sat in Marjorie's room, and stared out the window toward the lake. The water was calm, the sun low and gold across the waves. I whispered, "You'd know what to do. You always knew." And for a moment, I swear I could feel her near me, just behind my shoulder. Quiet, steady. Like she used to be. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out photo albums, old home videos, her voice on tape saying, "It's okay, sweetheart, you're safe." And suddenly I remembered something from years ago, when Emma was around 8. She'd stolen a candy bar from the gas station. When I found out, I didn't yell. I took her back to the store, made her apologize to the clerk, and pay for it with her own allowance. Afterward, I told her, doing the wrong thing doesn't make you a bad person. But hiding it? Lying about it? That's how you lose trust. I never imagined I'd be the one saying that again, 40 years later. Only this time, I wouldn't be able to fix it with a lecture or an apology. This wasn't about a candy bar. This was about everything. The next morning, I called an old friend, Henry Matthews, a retired attorney who still kept a small practice in town. I asked if we could meet in private. He agreed without hesitation. As I hung up the phone, I looked around the house, my house, and saw it differently. Not just walls and wood and windows. It was where Marjorie died, hand in mine. Where Emma was born. Where Christmases were warm and noisy, and spring mornings smelled like bacon and lilac. And now, to them, it was just a portfolio line. That was the day I stopped waiting for change. That was the day I started watching everything differently. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake. Speech balloon. Have you ever felt betrayed by your own family? Let us know in the comments. The following Saturday, I asked Emma to come by alone. No Ryan. No tote bags. No rehearsed smiles. She hesitated at first, but agreed. She arrived in the afternoon, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. I met her at the porch steps and gestured toward the bench swing where she used to sit with Marjorie and shell peas during summer. She sat stiffly, legs crossed, arms folded. I sat beside her, my voice calm but tired. We need to talk. She didn't look at me. About what? I know about the documents in your bag. She froze. I saw the power of attorney. The care facility brochures. The spreadsheet. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. That hurt more than any shouting ever could. I wasn't snooping, I added. I saw it. And it broke my heart. Emma exhaled sharply through her nose, like she'd been holding it in. We were only trying to prepare, Dad. You're getting older. You live out here alone. What if something happens to you? Ryan and I. This isn't about protecting me, I interrupted. This is about control. And money. She blinked, surprised. Maybe even offended. You think I don't see what's happening? You've been talking about this house like it's already yours. You talk around me. Over me. Like I'm just waiting to die. That's not fair, she whispered. No. What's not fair, I said, is being treated like a burden in the home I built with my own hands. The home I raised you in. The home your mother died in. Her voice trembled, but it was anger, not sadness. You're being dramatic. We're trying to help you move on. This place, this life, you're stuck in the past. You never let go of Mom. Because letting go of her doesn't mean forgetting her. And this house? This is my life. You want me out of it so you can turn it into a lakefront rental. She stood suddenly. You don't understand what it's like trying to build a future right now. You have no idea how hard it is. You've had everything handed to you. I laughed. Not cruelly, bitterly. Handed to me? I worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. You think this house was handed to me? Every plank, every beam, every nail, I earned this. And I gave you everything I could. She looked away. I softened. You used to love this place. You used to run down that dock with your arms out like you were flying. You used to say this was your castle. I'm not a little girl anymore, she murmured. No, I said. You're not. And I don't know who you are now. She didn't reply. Just stood there, arms crossed, staring into the yard. That night, she left without a hug. No, I love you. Just silence. But a seed had been planted. And not just in her. The next morning, I was sweeping the porch when Mrs. Dobbins from next door wandered over with her terrier. She nodded toward Emma's car, now gone. Rough visit? I hesitated, then nodded. She doesn't come around much anymore, she said, almost like an observation to herself. I remember when she used to run through the sprinkler out back. Time changes people. Yeah, I said. I guess it does. Mrs. Dobbins was kind enough not to press. But I could tell she knew something was off. And she wasn't the only one. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle shifts. A few neighbors stopped by to chat more often. One left a casserole. Another helped me lift some lumber into the truck. Small things. Quiet things. But they meant more than I could say. I started writing in my journal again, something I hadn't done since Marjorie passed. I didn't write complaints. I wrote reflections. Memories. Questions. Letters to Marjorie. Some angry. Some sad. Some filled with guilt. Did I spoil her? I wrote one night. Did I make her feel like love had no limits? Then one day, I was at the hardware store, picking up supplies for a deck repair, when I ran into Jacob. He used to be Emma's childhood friend, now a grown man, married, with a boy of his own. "Hey, Mr. Carter," he said, shaking my hand. "Haven't seen you in a while." We chatted for a few minutes before he asked how Emma was. I gave him a half-smile. "Busy, I suppose." He paused. "I hope she's being good to you. You deserve that. After everything you've done." His words lingered all the way home. I realized I wasn't the only one noticing the change in her. Something inside me started to settle. Not in defeat, in clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being unreasonable. I had been patient, maybe too patient. They weren't waiting for me to need help. They were planning for a version of me that was already helpless, absent, out of the picture. They were preparing for a future where I was no longer me, just an old man in a bed, forgotten in some sterile room with linoleum floors and bad lighting. I knew then that if I didn't act, I'd lose everything. Not just the house. My dignity. My identity. My peace. And so I sat at the kitchen table, opened my notebook, and wrote 4 words in big, block letters. Call Henry. Change everything. Henry still kept his office above the old bakery on Main Street, same creaky steps, same crooked blinds, same strong smell of cinnamon and paper. He looked older, sure, we both did, but his handshake was still firm, and his eyes were still sharp. He poured us 2 cups of black coffee, just like we used to drink back when we talked football and fishing on his porch after church. "You said it was urgent," he said, settling into his chair. I nodded. "It is." He raised an eyebrow. "Emma?" I didn't even flinch. "They're planning behind my back. Trying to get the house. Power of attorney. Long-term care facilities. She's not the same girl I raised, Henry. She's not looking out for me, she's looking past me." He didn't speak for a moment. Then he leaned back, rubbing his chin. "You know, once you cross this line, there's no going back." "I know," I said quietly. "But she crossed it first." We went over everything, the current will, the deed, the bank accounts, my military pension, even the little details like the silver flatware that belonged to Marjorie's grandmother. It was painful. Like carving pieces off your own soul. But it needed to be done. Henry was methodical, respectful. He never pushed, just guided. "Who do you want to leave it to, then? If not Emma?" I'd been thinking about that for weeks. "My neighbor's daughter, Alyssa. She's been coming by, helping with groceries, yard work. She never asked for a thing. Just listens. And she reminds me of Emma when she was young, the version I still miss." Henry jotted notes. "And the house? That stays mine until I pass. After that, if Emma contests the will, everything goes to charity. The whole thing. No loopholes. No negotiations." He looked up, surprised. "All of it? All of it?" He paused. "That's severe." "It's justice," I said. Henry tapped his pen against the desk, then nodded. "I'll draft it up." "You sure about this clause? If she fights me for what isn't hers, then she gets nothing. If she leaves it alone, she can keep her memories. That's more than fair." He finished the paperwork over the next couple of days, and I came back to sign. I'll never forget the sound of that pen scratching across the signature line. It was like the final nail in a coffin, only it wasn't mine. It was the end of something else. Something sacred that had already been eroded long before that moment. After I signed, Henry slid a thick folder toward me. "You want to mail her a copy?" "No," I said. "She'll know when the time's right." I left his office with the papers under my arm and a hole in my chest. This wasn't how I imagined my golden years. I always thought Emma would be beside me, helping me trim the hedges, drinking lemonade on the porch, telling stories to my grandchildren under the big oak tree. Instead, I was leaving everything I built to people who treated me with more love than my own daughter did. That night, I sat on the porch swing, the will in my lap, and spoke aloud to the darkening sky. "I hope you understand, Marge. I tried. I really did. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. Because I hadn't acted out of revenge, not really. I acted out of self-respect. I acted for the man who worked 2 jobs, who slept in a chair beside Emma's hospital bed when she broke her arm at 9, who taught her how to ride a bike and stayed up late helping her with math homework even when his back was aching. That man didn't deserve to be discarded. That man deserved a say. And now, he finally had one. The next morning, I locked the updated will in the safe beneath Marjorie's photo. I placed the old will, the one that gave everything to Emma, in the fireplace. I didn't watch it burn. I turned away. Let the flames take care of that chapter. What surprised me in the days after was how light I felt. I thought I'd be plagued with doubt or grief, but I wasn't. I woke up and had coffee without dread. I cleaned out the attic. I fixed the front step that had been wobbling for months. I started living again. Emma didn't call. Ryan didn't visit. The silence was loud, but it didn't crush me the way it once did. And slowly, other voices filled the space. Alyssa brought over muffins and asked about the garden. Mrs. Dobbins waved every morning from her porch. And the mailman, a quiet kid named Drew, started staying a little longer just to chat about fishing spots and the weather. The world kept spinning. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was the one choosing where to stand. This was just the beginning. I should have known they wouldn't stay quiet forever. It was about a month after I changed the will. Life had settled into a new rhythm. Peaceful, almost. I'd even started waking up without that weight in my chest, the one that used to press down before I even opened my eyes. Then one morning, I saw a sleek silver SUV pull up in front of the house. Ryan stepped out first. Emma followed, holding a leather folder in one hand and her phone in the other. I didn't expect them. They didn't call. They didn't ask. Emma barely looked at me as she walked up the steps. "We need to talk," she said, her voice clipped. I opened the door and let them in, already feeling the air shift. They didn't sit. They stood in the living room like realtors sizing up a property. Ryan spoke first. "We've spoken to a lawyer." My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. Emma stepped in. "He says that since I'm your only child, and you haven't appointed any official medical or financial representative, things could get complicated fast if anything happens to you. Probate, long legal delays, it could be a mess." I crossed my arms. "You mean if I die?" She hesitated. "Or become incapacitated?" Ryan jumped back in. "We're just trying to make sure things are smooth. Logical. It's about protecting your legacy." I let that word hang in the air for a moment. Legacy. Marjorie and I used to use that word when we talked about how we wanted Emma to grow up, kind, strong, independent, not entitled. Not this. Ryan continued, "We brought some papers for you to sign. It just formalizes things." Emma pulled out the folder and laid it on the coffee table like it was a done deal. Power of attorney. Medical directive. Transfer of property deed. Temporary, of course, just until things are settled. I stared at the papers. Then at her. Settled? I asked. Settled how? She didn't answer. Just looked at Ryan. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about preparation. This was about possession. Emma didn't come here to help. She came to take. I picked up the folder and calmly flipped through the documents. My name, all over them. Signature lines already flagged with little yellow tabs. It was insulting, like they assumed I wouldn't even read them. Let me ask you something, I said, voice quiet. Where would I go, if I signed this? Emma blinked. What? If I gave you this house, this land, everything. Where would I go? She opened her mouth, then shut it. Ryan tried to speak, but I held up my hand. Don't answer. I already know. I picked up the folder, walked to the fireplace, and set it down beside the cold hearth. Then I walked into my study and returned with my folder. The one Henry helped me put together. I held it close to my chest and faced them again. I've already taken care of my affairs, I said. Legally. Permanently. Emma furrowed her brow. What do you mean? I mean, this house stays mine. And when I'm gone, if I'm gone, it won't go to you. Not unless you leave things exactly as they are now. And if you try to fight it, I paused, letting the weight of the next word settle, everything goes to charity. All of it. Her face drained of color. Ryan scoffed. You wouldn't, he said, stepping forward. That's emotional blackmail. No, I said, calm as I'd ever been. That's a consequence. You made choices. So did I. Emma's voice cracked. Why are you doing this to me? I stared at her. My daughter. My little girl who used to hold my hand crossing the street and call me her hero. I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm doing this for me. She turned and stormed out of the house. Ryan followed after a long glare. I didn't watch them leave. I walked back to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat at the table in silence. They hadn't even noticed the photos on the wall, the ones I rearranged just last week. Marjorie's smile in the center. Emma's baby picture just below. And next to them, the first photo I ever took with Alyssa and her daughter, laughing over lemonade. That night, I took the wool folder and placed it in a small fireproof box. I tucked it into the crawlspace behind the study bookshelf. Not because I was afraid, but because I was ready. I went to bed early that night. I expected to lie awake, haunted by the confrontation. But I didn't. I slept deeply. Peacefully. As if some final switch had flipped in my soul. Because there are some things even betrayal can't take away. My name. My house. My history. My dignity. And most of all, my choice. It didn't take long after that. A week, maybe 2. That's when I heard from my cousin Ruth. Emma was planning a baby shower. Not a quiet gathering, either. She'd rented out the event hall at the community center. Big crowd. Dozens of family members, church friends, even a few old neighbors. I wasn't invited. Ruth was hesitant to tell me. She thought I already knew. Thought I was just keeping things low-key. No. I was being erased. They were celebrating a new life while pretending mine didn't matter anymore. While still assuming I'd quietly vanish, deed in hand. I didn't want to go. But I also couldn't sit by and watch them write the ending to a story that still had my name on the cover. So I shaved, ironed my shirt, pulled out the clean brown boots Marjorie always liked, and printed 2 things, a notarized copy of my final will and a transcript, word for word, of Ryan's conversation I'd recorded on my porch weeks earlier, the one where he said, once it's in your name, will finally be free. I wasn't proud of recording it. But I was tired of being the only one playing fair. The day of the shower, I walked into that hall just after the cake had been cut. Music played low. Laughter everywhere. Tables lined with pink balloons and baby-themed decorations. Emma stood near the front, opening gifts with a tight little smile, looking every bit the proud mother-to-be. Her smile dropped the second she saw me. The room fell quiet as I walked forward, slow but steady, holding the manila envelope in my hands. Ryan stood too quickly, all show. "What are you doing here?" I ignored him. I looked at Emma. My voice didn't shake. "I brought you something. A gift." I laid the envelope on the gift table, beside a stack of pastel boxes and ribbon bags. "This is the last thing you'll ever get from me." She blinked, stunned. "Dad." I turned to the crowd. Familiar faces. Some who hadn't seen me in years. Some who only knew the version of the story Emma and Ryan had been feeding them. "I know this isn't the time or place," I began. But I wasn't given a time or place. I wasn't even given an invitation. So I made my own. I lifted the transcript first. "Read aloud from it, slow and clear. Once it's in your name, we'll finally be free." Gasps. A few murmurs. Someone dropped a fork. I held up the will next. "This is a legal, notarized copy of my will. It states that if my daughter or her husband contests any part of it, every last asset, the house, the land, the money, goes to charity. To a veterans organization in Marjorie's name." I looked Emma dead in the eyes. "You screamed that I wasn't your father anymore. You made that choice. I'm just honoring it." Ryan stepped forward, red-faced. "This is harassment." "No," I said. "This is closure." I looked out over the stunned room. "I gave my life to my daughter. Every hour. Every dollar. Every ounce of love. I was never rich. But I gave her all I had." Emma's eyes welled with tears. "But not the kind that move you. The kind that come when consequences finally catch up." I stepped away from the table. "I hope your child never has to learn what I did, that sometimes, the people you raise stop seeing you as a person. They start seeing you as a transaction." With that, I turned and walked out. No one followed me. No one stopped me. I got in my truck, pulled out of that lot, and drove straight to the lake. Sat on the end of the dock. Shoes off, toes in the water. Just like I used to do with Emma when she was 5 and afraid the fish would bite her. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. I just felt, still. Like a chapter had ended. Not in fury. Not in chaos. Just with a heavy, final period. A few days later, Ruth called. Said half the guests left early. Some whispered about what they'd heard. Some defended Emma. Others weren't so sure. I didn't care about the gossip. I cared that the truth was finally in the open. No more pretending. No more hoping. No more chances. I had spoken. And I had meant every word. Brain, do you think the father made the right choice? Comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more true life stories. The phone didn't ring for a long time after that day. Not that I expected it to. Once the truth was laid bare in front of everyone, the transcripts, the will, the look in Emma's eyes, there wasn't much left to say. No apologies. No excuses. Just silence. The kind that creeps into the corners of your home like dust. Quiet, steady, almost invisible, until you sit down in your old chair, and suddenly it's everywhere. At first, it stung. I won't lie. I'd wake up some mornings thinking maybe there'd be a message. A letter. Even a single text. Something. But nothing came. Even the neighbors tiptoed around the subject. Mrs. Dobbins waved, but didn't ask. The mailman left letters a little quicker. Ruth didn't call again, though I saw her once at the grocery store. She looked at me with a mix of sympathy and uncertainty, like she didn't know which version of the story to believe. I didn't blame her. People like easy stories, good versus bad. But what happened between me and Emma wasn't simple. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erosion. A slow, quiet wearing away of love, respect, and memory until all that remained were empty obligations and financial calculations. Still, I tried not to wallow. I filled my days. Took long walks around the lake. Fixed the crooked shutter on the guest room window. Repaired the loose stones along the garden path. Even repainted the back deck, something I'd put off for years. I wasn't just distracting myself. I was reclaiming something. Purpose. Every plank I sanded. Every nail I drove into wood. Every hour spent trimming hedges or cleaning gutters, it reminded me this home was still alive. Still mine. And not just because of some legal paper in a lockbox. Because of what it meant. Because of who had lived here. And who still did. One afternoon, while I was oiling the porch swing, Alyssa, the neighbor's daughter, stopped by with her little girl, Hannah. "I brought banana bread," she said, holding a still warm loaf wrapped in a towel. I smiled. "Did you make it?" She grinned. "My mom did. But I supervised." We sat on the porch, her daughter playing in the yard. Alyssa told me about work, about her husband's new shift schedule, about how Hannah was terrified of frogs but obsessed with clouds. It was easy conversation. Unforced. Real. At one point, she said, "I heard about what happened at the shower. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you did the right thing. You protected yourself." I looked down at the boards beneath my feet, then at the house I had poured my life into. "Funny thing is," I said, "I wasn't protecting the house. I was protecting what's left of me." She nodded, understanding more than her years should have allowed. When they left, I stood at the porch railing and watched Hannah run to their car, her giggles echoing across the yard. A sound I hadn't heard in too long. And for the first time in a while, I didn't feel alone. Later that week, I drove into town to donate some old furniture to the veterans' shelter. On my way back, I stopped at the cemetery. Brought fresh daisies to Marjorie's grave. Wiped the dirt off her name. "I did what I thought was right," I whispered. "I hope you'd agree." The wind blew soft through the trees. A bird chirped somewhere nearby. I stayed there a long while. Just me and her. Like old times. The house felt warmer that night. Not literally, just fuller. Like it remembered something. Like maybe the memories Emma had pushed aside were still buried in the walls, in the floorboards, in the breeze that moved through the open windows. I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through a photo album. Emma's baby picture. Her first drawing. Her graduation smile. All those versions of her, frozen in time, untouched by bitterness, untouched by greed. I missed that girl. I always will. But the woman she became? The one who saw me as an inconvenience, a hurdle, a deed to be transferred? I didn't miss her. I grieved her. And that's a different kind of sadness. A quieter one. A necessary one. But still, there was peace in the quiet now. I was no longer waiting for love to return through the door. I was no longer hoping for a call that wouldn't come. I was living again, not pausing. Somewhere between the silence and the sawdust, I found something I thought I'd lost. Myself. The idea didn't come all at once. It arrived in fragments, like sunlight trickling through a window you forgot to open. It started with Alyssa's daughter, Hannah. She came by one afternoon with a drawing, a crayon sketch of my house with a giant smiling sun over it and 3 stick figures on the porch. "Who's this?" I asked, pointing to the smallest one. "That's you," she said proudly, "and that's me, and that's Mommy. We're having lemonade." I smiled. "Looks like a pretty good day." "It's always a good day here," she said, matter of fact, like it was obvious. Later, after they left, I looked at that picture again. At the simple joy it held. And I thought, maybe this house isn't done yet. Maybe I'm not done yet. That evening, I called Henry and asked if the Veterans Charity listed in the will had a local chapter. "They do," he said. "Just opened a small office last year." "Why?" I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I called the chapter the next morning. A young woman named Elena answered the phone. Polite, warm, curious. When I told her who I was and what I was considering, she paused for a long moment. Then she asked, "Would you be open to a visit? We'd love to hear more." 2 days later, Elena and another volunteer named Greg came by. They were younger, early 30s, maybe, but their eyes were tired in a way only veterans and caregivers understand. They walked through the house slowly, reverently, like it was a church. "It's perfect," Greg said. "Open space. Accessible. Peaceful. This could really help some people." Elena nodded. "There's not enough places like this. Quiet. Restorative. Most of our guys are just looking for somewhere that feels like home, even for a weekend." I offered them lemonade on the porch. We sat for an hour, discussing logistics, possibilities, zoning. They weren't pushy. Just excited. Respectful. I told them about Marjorie. About how we used to talk about opening a small bed and breakfast after retirement. She always wanted people to feel welcome here. Federal rested. Maybe this was the next best thing. Maybe it was even better. That night, I stayed up late sketching floor plans. Ideas. Names. Marjorie's porch, I wrote at the top of the page. A place for veterans. Widows. Single parents who just needed a break. A weekend. A breath. I started clearing out rooms the next morning. Donated the furniture from Emma's old bedroom. Emptied the dusty sewing room and began turning it into a quiet reading space with shelves and soft chairs. The house came alive with every box I moved, every cobweb I swept. It felt like it was stretching, waking up after a long slumber. Word got around, as it always does in small towns. Mrs. Dobbins brought over curtains she'd sewn herself. Alyssa showed up with paint samples and said, "Put me to work, Mr. Carter." Even Jacob, Emma's old friend, stopped by with a hammer and a 6-pack and said, "I hear you're building something worth believing in." For the first time in years, I wasn't just fixing things to pass time. I was building something with meaning again. Each plank, each nail, each coat of fresh paint, they weren't for resale value or inheritance battles. They were for people who still knew how to say thank you. The first test weekend came 2 months later. 3 veterans and 1 widow named Lorraine. They played checkers, walked the trails, ate too much peach cobbler. I taught them how to fish again. Sat around a fire pit and listened to stories from wars I'd never fought but understood just the same. On Sunday morning, one of them, an old Marine named Carl, pulled me aside. "I haven't slept through a full night in years," he said, eyes glassy. "But I did hear." I nodded, not trusting my voice. That night, I sat on the porch with Marjorie's old shawl draped over my shoulders. I looked out at the stars and whispered, "We did it." Because it didn't feel like just my project. It felt like ours. Hers and mine. The house was full again, not with entitled silence or manipulative smiles, but with laughter. Gratitude. Life. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just healing. I was helping others heal, too. The front porch hasn't been this loud in decades. Laughter. Footsteps. The soft creak of rocking chairs filled with people who know the value of silence, and the gift of being heard. On some evenings, we play music, old country or soft jazz, and someone brings out lemonade or cobbler, and suddenly this house doesn't feel like a monument to the past anymore. It feels like home again. Not just mine. The first veteran weekend turned into a monthly program. Then bi-weekly. Word spread faster than I ever expected. Turns out, peace is in short supply, and when people find it, they don't keep it to themselves. The house slowly transformed. One room became a mini library. Another a quiet meditation room with floor cushions and a handmade quilt hanging on the wall, stitched by Mrs. Dobbins and her church friends. The basement workshop, which I hadn't touched in years, came back to life with hammers, nails, and stories shared over sawdust. Most of the folks who come through don't say much at first. But by the time they leave, they hug me like an old friend. I keep a little guest book by the front door now. Some leave only initials. Others write full pages. One note simply read: I came here with nothing. I'm leaving with peace. Thank you, Marjorie. That one brought tears to my eyes. Alyssa became my right hand without even trying. She pops in after work, brings fresh flowers, reorganizes the pantry. Her daughter, Hannah, calls the guest room Grandpa's room, even though she's never once asked if I really am her grandpa. I guess it doesn't matter. Titles don't mean much when love is present. One afternoon, I was teaching Carl, the Marine who hadn't slept well in years, how to sand a bench for the front yard. We were mid-conversation about varnish when I noticed a familiar car slowing near the edge of the property. Emma. She didn't stop. Just stared from the driver's seat. No Ryan in sight. She looked older. Tired. Her hair tied back loosely, no makeup. For a brief second, our eyes met. Then she drove away. I didn't wave. I didn't feel anger. Just distance. Some losses don't need closure. They just need space. A few days later, I was out by the garden pulling weeds when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting Alyssa or maybe one of the guests. It was my granddaughter. Not born yet during the last confrontation. But now? Maybe 6, maybe 7. She looked unsure, clutching a small drawing in her hand. Hi, she said. Mom said you live here. I stood slowly, dusted off my hands. I do. She hesitated, then offered the paper, a drawing of a house, with 2 people holding hands by the porch. I wanted to meet you. I took the picture with shaking fingers. Thank you, I whispered. She smiled. Mom said you were mean, but you don't look mean. I almost laughed. I'm not mean, I said gently. I just got hurt. She nodded like she understood something far beyond her years. Can I sit? I brought her a lemonade and we sat on the swing, the same swing where I once told Emma the story of how she was born during a thunderstorm. I didn't ask questions. I didn't press. We just rocked quietly, the breeze soft, the world gentle again. Later, when she left, she hugged me around the waist. Bye, Grandpa. I stood there long after she left, the drawing still in my hands. Real family isn't always about blood. It's about who shows up. Who remembers. Who loves you not because they have to, but because they want to. I used to think I lost everything when I lost Emma. But I was wrong. I lost a version of her. And in letting go, I found something else. People who saw me. Needed me. Respected me. I found a community. A new family. And somehow, in the middle of all that pain, I found joy again. It was late October when she came. The wind had started to turn sharp in the evenings, and the trees lining the lake had just begun to shed their fire-colored leaves. I was stacking firewood by the side porch when I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel, not rushing, not slow, just steady. Emma's car. Part of me thought about walking away. Part of me wanted to pretend I didn't see her. But I didn't. I stood still, watching her step out of the car. She looked thinner. Paler. Her clothes hung loosely, and her eyes, those same eyes that once lit up when she saw a butterfly or heard Marjorie humming, were tired in a way I hadn't seen before. She clutched her coat to her chest like a shield. "Hi, Dad," she said, almost too quietly to hear. I didn't respond. Not yet. She walked up the porch steps slowly, pausing before she reached the top. "I heard about the house. The veterans. Alyssa told me, it's beautiful, what you're doing." I nodded. "It matters to people." She nodded too, eyes cast downward. I wanted to see it. One last time. I stepped aside and opened the door. She didn't look around like someone reminiscing. She didn't touch the walls or breathe in the old scent of home. She walked straight to the kitchen table and sat down. I followed and sat across from her. "I wasn't going to come," she said. "But I thought you deserved to hear it from me." I stayed quiet. "I'm sorry," she said. "For the way I treated you. For letting Ryan speak for me. For letting money twist things." Her voice cracked at the last word. I kept telling myself it was about protecting the future, about security, but the truth is, I didn't want to lose control. I thought if I planned everything, I wouldn't have to face losing you too. The room felt still. "You lost me anyway," I said softly. She nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I know." There was a long silence. One that stretched into something fragile and honest. "I miss her," she whispered. "Mom. I think I buried her too deep inside me." "She never left this place," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "She's in every corner. I couldn't come back here without feeling her. That's why I stayed away." Another silence. But this one didn't hurt. It was just necessary. She pulled something from her coat pocket and slid it across the table, an envelope. "I rewrote my will," she said. "I'm leaving it to my daughter. Not the house. Just what I have. Whatever she does with it, I want her to earn it." I looked at the envelope, then at her. "That's your choice." She nodded. "It is." There was no plea for forgiveness. No request for anything in return. Just a moment between a father and daughter who had once loved each other more purely than most people ever get to. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "I just needed to say sorry." "Thank you," I said. "I accept that." She stood up slowly. "This place, it's better now. Fuller. She'd be proud of you." I followed her to the door. She paused at the threshold and looked at the porch swing. "I remember sitting here while you told me stories about the stars," she said, almost smiling. "I thought you knew everything back then." "I didn't," I said. "But I knew I loved you." She nodded, eyes shining. "I never stopped loving you, Dad. I just stopped showing it." I nodded back. That's the part that mattered. She stepped down into the yard, turning back only once. "Take care of it. And yourself." "I will." And then she drove away. Not rushed. Not slow. Just steady. She didn't ask to come back. And I didn't offer. But for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace where she was concerned. Not resolution. Not reunion. But understanding. We were two people who had walked through fire, and though the scars still marked us, we had both survived. That was enough. Speech balloon. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved for your own peace? Let us know below. The sign went up the following spring. Hand-carved, simple, mounted on 2 thick cedar posts right by the entrance path. Marjorie's porch, a place for peace, rest, and renewal. The letters were painted soft white against a pale blue background, the same shade Marjorie loved for our old porch swing. I stood beside Alyssa as we unveiled it during the opening ceremony. Dozens of guests, veterans, neighbors, local families, stood in a half-circle, many of them wiping their eyes. I had written a short speech but left it folded in my pocket. Instead, I looked out at the small crowd and said, "This house was built on love." And for a while, I forgot what that looked like. But thanks to all of you. I remember now. And that was enough. The ribbon was cut. People clapped. And the house came alive in a way it never had before, not even in the good years. Kids ran barefoot across the yard, volunteers gave tours of the garden, music played from a small speaker tucked behind a flower pot. Carl grilled burgers. Lorraine baked pies. Hannah ran from room to room with a toy stethoscope, pretending to be a doctor for the day. The lake shimmered in the afternoon sun, and the trees swayed with a kind breeze. And somewhere in all of it, I felt her. Marjorie. Not as a memory. Not as a ghost. But as a presence, steady, warm, proud. I walked through each room that afternoon. The house was still old, still creaky in places, still smelled like pine and a hint of lemon polish. But it breathed differently now. In the reading room, 2 veterans played chess under a window Marjorie used to sew beneath. In the kitchen, Alyssa and her husband laughed while Hannah taught them how to make peanut butter sandwiches. In the living room, a teenage girl, part of a local mentoring group we'd partnered with, sat curled in an armchair, lost in a book pulled from Marjorie's old shelf. And on the porch? 3 men I'd never met before sipped coffee, sharing stories about deployments, bad knees, and grandkids they hadn't seen in a while. They looked more at peace than I had seen in anyone for years. That night, after the last of the guests had gone home, and Alyssa had taken Hannah back next door, I sat alone on the porch swing, blanket over my lap, the stars stretching quiet and wide across the lake sky. I looked out at the house, my house, and let out a slow breath. It was whole again. Not because it was full of things. Because it was full of people. Not perfect ones. But good ones. Honest ones. People who understood that family isn't just blood. It's the people who stand by you when things fall apart. Who rebuild with you. Who don't count what they've given, just what they've shared. I thought about Emma. Where she was. What she was doing. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel hollow. I just hoped she'd be okay. Maybe she would be. Maybe not. But I had finally let go of the part of me that believed it was my job to fix her. To wait for her. To bleed for her without question. I had learned, slowly and painfully, that love must come freely, or not at all. A soft breeze lifted the corner of the blanket. I reached down and adjusted it, then leaned back and looked toward the sky. "Marge," I whispered, "we did it." I imagined her smiling. That little half-smile she used to give when I finally fixed a leak or surprised her with wildflowers. "I kept my promise," I said. The house stayed in the family. Just not the one we thought. A light flickered on in the hallway window. One of the guests must have woken for a glass of water or a late-night walk. The house was alive, even at night. Even now. I closed my eyes and let the porch swing rock gently. The crickets chirped. The wood creaked. And somewhere deep in the bones of this place, in the roots of the earth below, I felt the hum of everything we had built. Not just a house. But a home. A legacy. And at long last, peace.